Welcome to the first episode of What I Watched this month. This will be a recurring series where I share with you the movies I watch each month and my thoughts on them. I start off this month by watching Apocalypse Now by Francis Ford Coppola. This is one of those films you keep hearing being talked about but never get around to watching. But I can tell you, when I finally got to watch it, it certainly lived up to the hype. While watching this movie, I felt totally transported to 70s Vietnam. I became lost in the journey of Captain Willard, played by Martin Sheen, and his quest to kill Colonel Kurtz, played by the Marlon Brando. This movie was practically flawless. The acting was incredible, cinematography great, and Brando just stole the show for the 20 minutes or so he was on screen. I'm sure most of you watching this have already seen this film, so I won't spend any longer talking about it. Next I watched another war-related film, Lord of War, directed by Andrew Niccol and starring Nick Cage, Jared Leto and Ethan Hawke, and the late Ian Holmes. This film follows the crazy life of weapons dealer Yuri Orlov as he gets involved in the illicit activities of selling weapons to various terrorist organizations and authoritarian regimes. For me, this film was a bit of a miss. The story was certainly exciting and entertaining, and there are certainly some very memorable scenes in it, but many of the characters seemed half fleshed out and at times even unrealistic. I don't know, I suppose it just wasn't my type of film. Next I rewatched Being John Malkovich, directed by Spike Jonze. It follows the story of unemployed New York City puppeteer Craig Schwartz, played by John Cusack, as he reluctantly takes a temporary job as a filing clerk for the eccentric Dr. Lester, played by Orson Bean. While he's at work though, Craig discovers a portal that leads into the mind of renowned actor John Malkovich. This film, to this day, still remains one of my favourites. The story is just crazy unique. The whole film is unique, in fact. It's quirky, darkly funny, disturbing, and even romantic. There's a love triangle that develops in this film which is, to put it lightly, incredibly weird. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, just watch it. I then watched The Interview. No, not That Interview. That Interview. It stars pre-Lord of the Rings Hugo Weaving, and it follows the story of a man who is seized one morning from his apartment by the police and is brought in for interrogation. It is then slowly revealed that the man is being interrogated about a series of murders which he is suspected of committing. The film was pretty good. Despite the fact that the film takes place 95% of the time in one room, it never fails to keep the viewer's attention going. It's certainly one of the better slow burners I've seen, and Hugo Weaving gives another incredible performance in it. I then watched season 4 of Rick and Morty. It was good. I then watched The Elephant Man, directed by David Lynch and starring John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins. The Elephant Man follows the real-life story of Joseph Merrick, who was born with a rare case of Proteus syndrome, which caused his face to have the appearance of an elephant. This film is so far my favourite of Lynch's work. It has the perfect balance of his synonymous surrealist elements and the more traditional approach to telling a story. It has superb acting, especially from Hopkins, and it manages to paint a truly dreary depiction of 19th century London with its cinematography and production design. The only issue I had with this film was its editing. Some shots that really should have lingered longer in places with the viewer were cut far too short, and the transitions between different scenes were quite awkward in places. Perhaps that's due to the fact that this film was made 40 years ago and the editing is somewhat dated, but besides that, this was a truly powerful and memorable film that I would recommend anyone to watch. Next, I watched The Disaster Artist. This film tells the story behind the making of one of the world's worst films, The Room. This film surprised me. Usually comedies like these don't really strike much of a chord with me, but I really enjoyed this one. The acting was good, especially from James Franco, and there were some pretty funny moments in it. However, I can't really picture myself rewatching this film anytime soon. Anyway, if you want a pretty relaxed comedy, then The Disaster Artist is probably a good call. I also watched the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes features for all three films. I'm not sure if these films really count, but they're an interesting watch nonetheless. I also find it fascinating to see the process behind movies that we're all so used to seeing on screen. With regard to how behind the scenes features come, this one's pretty good. To finish off, I watched another Hugo Weaving film, V for Vendetta, directed by James McTague. This film follows the story of V, a vigilante who, in a dystopian future, uses terrorist tactics to fight the oppressive government regime he finds himself living in. Overall, this film was a very entertaining experience. However, I feel at times the film chose to focus on large spectacles rather than actually fleshing out its characters. At the end of the movie, I really felt no emotional attachment to any of the characters. This, paired with the superhero qualities of the protagonist V, created a film that seemed to have no consequences to the characters' decisions. And that's it. All the movies that I watched in June 2020. Please let me know what you think of this new format of video. Also, if you get a chance, watch my other short films on my channel. Anyways, I'll see you all next month.